My wife is denying we're married and wants to be called my girlfriend. I'm confused. My wife, 33 female, and I, 29 male, have been married 4 years now, coming on 5. We have generally had a good relationship and a good marriage. We had a reasonably expensive wedding, which we're still paying for now. I get the bill every month to prove it. My wife took charge of planning the wedding, so it was to her tastes. She seemed to enjoy it at the time, and for the first few years of our marriage, she would look back at the wedding with me happily and without issues. In recent months I've noticed my wife's attitude to A, our wedding, and B, our marriage itself shift. It began by her, I thought jokingly, referring to herself as my girlfriend. She told me to buy her a girlfriend card for Valentine's Day rather than a wife one, for example. I thought she was just playing around at first. But this behavior has only escalated. 2 months ago my wife stopped wearing her wedding ring. I was understandably upset and asked her if there was something wrong. She told me everything was fine and she just doesn't the sensation of jewelry on her hands. My wife has never liked rings and jewelry, so this could be the case. But when we are with friends, my wife will get upset if I talk about her as my wife rather than just a girlfriend. She will go as far to interrupt me if I'm talking, telling a story to correct me on our relationship. Initially, this was something our friends laughed at, but now everybody just finds it understandably awkward. One of our friends was talking about their own wedding, which is scheduled for early next year. They asked for advice from my wife about how she'd planned ours, and my wife responded with what wedding? When our friend continued talking about the table decorations my wife had used, my wife visibly teared up in front of the whole group and had to step outside. Later that evening, I asked her directly if she has a problem with our relationship or if I'm doing something wrong in our marriage. She assured me that everything is fine between us. From my perspective, outside of this issue, our relationship is as strong as ever. We are considering kids in the near future, our sex life is great, and my wife recently suggested we get matching tattoos as a renewal of our love. Is there advice anyone can offer on why my wife might be acting like this and what I should do? Comments. You need to sit down with her seriously and make sure she's okay. This does sound like she could be having a breakdown and needs some help. This is the exact way my friend's mom was acting. Then they took her to the doctors eventually when it got really bad and found out she had a tumor pressing on some part of her brain. It was like she was transported 20 years into the past, but only in her head. She would start acting shy around her husband because she didn't know if he had a crush on her or not. They've been married for 15 years. Is she okay? Are they all okay? Also, the last bit is cute, even if it's due to a brain tumor. Yeah, everyone is all good. That was about 5 years ago. I'm not going to pretend like I know about brain tumors, but my understanding was that she had a type of brain tumor that was easily removable, but due to the position, location, it had some pretty serious symptoms like memory loss, loss of balance, and some other weird stuff like what I described above. I've talked to her since and she just said that she really doesn't remember the whole thing. In her mind, from beginning to end, from when she first started acting weird to the day she had the surgery done to remove the tumor, it was only like 1-2 weeks. Obviously, in reality it was over a year and a half, but she said that's how it is in her mind, about 2 weeks of being confused, then surgery, then back to her normal happy self. Kinda creepy that she has no recollection of almost an entire year out of her life. An even creepier fact is that if you ask her about specific things that happened while she had the tumor, she can remember them, but if you ask her to bring up anything substantial on her own, she can't remember that entire year. For example, what important event happened in August? My friend's cousin graduated. I have no idea what happened. But if you ask her like this, she will remember. Do you remember Joey's graduation in August? OMG, yes, the whole family went and Ruth almost fell down the stairs because it was raining. The brain is a weird thing. A dear friend of mine had extremely similar symptoms to Op's wife, which turned out to be Huntington's disease. It's a terrible illness that I wouldn't wish on anyone. His wife is the right age for the onset, and the symptoms you are describing are familiar to me. I hope they investigate Huntington's disease. My sweet friend, now deceased, had all of these psychological symptoms for about a year and a half before any of the physical symptoms of the disease began to plague her. I know that I am more worried about Huntington's than the average Redditor, but they should at least see a doctor and have her checked out properly. Yeah, denying reality is pretty serious. If you told a doctor this, they would most likely admit her for a whole workup, because she's basically refusing to admit a massively significant thing in her life didn't happen, and is asking you to help perpetuate this false narrative. I'd contact your family doctor, schedule a checkup. Make sure you mention exactly what is going on in the relationship, and if nothing is physically wrong, then obviously see a psychiatrist, and it's important you guys need to see one together. Her reality could be distorted. You need to be there to confirm anything going on. Either that, or she's seeing someone else and is trying to somehow not feel as guilty by pretending she's only your girlfriend. But I'd go with the first one. She's having some mental health issues. But don't freak out, if she is. Luckily you've realized that and they can help her. Good luck, wish you guys the best. If she got upset when friends talked about her table decorations, it sounds like Hop's wife genuinely believes they are not married. As per other comments, meds or other health issues can cause this. Go to a doctor. I know two people who acted weird and did really crazy and dangerous things totally out of character. One of them involved a tractor, because their meds had messed up their calcium levels. Go to a doctor. This sounds like a serious mental health crisis. I would schedule an appointment with a trusted physician to first rule out any physical injury or issue that could be causing this somewhat sudden onset of denial, and request scans of her head to rule out anything serious. If she's otherwise physically healthy, then it's time to see a psychologist. Either way, I suggest you be gentle with her at the moment. I would avoid confronting her about this topic. The fact that she said, "What wedding?" and had teared up, leads me to believe there is something very serious happening to her, whether it's physical or mental, and in either case you are definitely not equipped to handle it. And if she is on the brink of some kind of emotional collapse, you don't want to be the one who pushes her over the edge by demanding answers or forcing her to look at photos of a wedding that she can't remember. As someone who has personally experienced some very serious mental health problems that included a sudden loss of short-term memory, I cannot tell you just how scary it is to feel betrayed by your own mind like that. Get her some help immediately. Good luck, Op. I got a different take on it. It's possible she feels like she's now just a wife as opposed to being a sought-after person, girlfriend, or someone planning the most exciting day of her life. A bride. Once the magic of being a bride wears off and you become a wife, it might lead to a slump for someone who didn't look past the wedding into the actual marriage. It feels like she might be depressed not to have something exciting in her life, and by denying it, she's trying to reclaim the past. Either way, a therapist is the way to go. Okay, first off, let me say how sorry I am to hear you're going through this. Over a year and a half ago I took it a step further by dropping the bomb on my family with divorce. My wife and I at the time were married for 10 years. For me this feeling came out of nowhere. I love my wife dearly and wouldn't be able to live without her. After she let me run with it for a month or 3, in which I even moved out the house and moved in with my dad, also something I said I'd never do, she finally got me to move back in and agree to testing at the neurology department. This led to a complete rundown of everything in my head. And I'm afraid to say that it was the cause. I have been diagnosed with FTD, frontotemporal dementia. This changed me in ways that my family and friend and even myself couldn't and still can't fathom. I'm not saying your wife has the same, but it really all sounds horribly familiar. Have you ever explored medical options, even if just for yourself regarding your wife's behavior? If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. This sounds tangentially very similar to what happened with my parents. They were happily married for over 20 years, and then over the span of 6 months, my mother changed completely. She became reckless and temperamental, and filed for divorce shortly afterward. My father was, and still is, utterly confused as to what happened. He still loves her with every fiber of his being, while she is actively severing ties to her past life, family. She hasn't been to a doctor for any sort of diagnosis, but she's not the same person. The change was so rapid that I can't help but believe there is some underlying medical condition. 4 options I see. She feels old. 33 is still quite young, but she might be self-conscious about her appearance. Society pushes high standards of youthfulness on women. The fact that she's the older party in a heterosexual relationship might make her more insecure. People have their own associations with words. Perhaps she associates wife with a frumpy old lady in an apron and girlfriend with a cool, pretty college girl partying and living her best life. She has someone on the side and she's trying to distance herself from your relationship. Unlikely, as you say your relationship is good. She has some mental problems. She might be losing memory, dissociating, etc. She might be anxious about the future of the relationship. Even if your relationship is good, maybe there's a problem with the amount, type of affection? Just because it seems stable and sex is good, doesn't mean it couldn't be better. Maybe you speak a different love language? Or maybe, if that's not her first relationship, she has suffered heartbreak in the past and is now insecure? I think you should seek therapy, both couples therapy and personal therapy for her. My best friend has bipolar disorder. She doesn't believe she has it. She refuses to believe she was diagnosed with it twice. She refuses to take meds for it, because she believes nothing is wrong. There are serious lapses in her memory, judgment, and just all around has some odd behavior. I broke up with my fiancé last year because he was an abuser. She knew that's why I broke it off. And she obviously knew that no wedding would be happening, because I told her to send back her bridesmaid dress. A few months ago when she was at my house, I started throwing out pics of my ex-fiancé. She looked at me weird and asked why I would throw out pics of the person I'm marrying. She legit did not believe me when I reminded her that I had dumped him months prior. On another occasion, she came over to my house crying. I asked what she was crying about. She said her and her husband's doctor was sending them to a fertility specialist for testing to find out why they still haven't been able to have a baby. I had to remind her that she had found out almost 5 years ago that her husband is completely infertile. He had like 2 sperm when there should have been millions. She denied that he was infertile, or that his sperm count was ever tested before. She wanted to know why I would say something like that. She legitimately did not believe me when I told her they'd already done all this testing like 5 years ago. A couple years ago my friend stopped going to work every day. I asked why she wasn't going to work. She said she still was going to work, and thought it was weird that I was asking her that. Turns out, she had been fired like 6 months prior because she was just not showing up every day, and they had actually walked her out. She didn't remember any of that happening, and thought she still had a job there. Her sister was the one who told me that she had been fired. I'm not sure Op's wife is lying or trying to lie. Or trying to gaslight him. I think her brain may really be that messed up. Don't get her pregnant. This is clearly some kind of mental or physical issue that needs to be addressed immediately. When was her last physical? Think carefully about her behavior in general. Does anything else seem off? Note all of that and call her doctor. Let them know that you think something might be wrong. Subscribe, like, share, for more juicy stories.